Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never imagined an anniversary dinner would feel like walking into a negotiation I didn't know I was part of. But that's how it felt the moment my wife, Marlo, told me earlier that morning. By the way, my boss is joining us tonight. Don't make it weird. I remember staring at her, confused. Why would I make it weird? She shrugged like the question bored her. He insisted on celebrating with us. He's been mentoring me. Just don't overreact. Please. Overreact? Why would I overreact on a night meant for us? I pushed the thought aside, trying to keep the peace, because that's what I always did. She had been stressed lately, and I figured maybe her boss, Rowan, had helped her through something at work. Maybe this was her way of acknowledging him. But deep down, I felt an odd heaviness settle in my chest, like the night was already drifting away from being ours. We arrived at the restaurant early. I wore the watch she gifted me 3 anniversaries ago, back when she used to write handwritten notes and tuck them into my jacket pocket. But those soft gestures had disappeared over the last year. Everything about us had turned clipped, efficient, almost transactional. Marlo checked her phone 3 times before Rowan arrived. The moment he walked in, she stood up a little too quickly, smoothing her dress, the kind of adjustment you make when you want someone to notice. He greeted her first, not even glancing at me. Marlo, you look radiant tonight. She blushed. Actually blushed. Thanks, Rowan. Glad you could make it. I stood and extended my hand. I'm Aiden. He took it loosely, like he was holding something unimportant. Right, the husband. Just the husband. The words sat in my stomach like a stone. Dinner started off civilized enough. Rowan talked, loudly, confidently, about projects, clients, late-night brainstorming sessions. Every so often, he'd touch her arm lightly, and she never pulled away. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, misreading, overthinking. But then the drinks arrived, and Rowan leaned back in his chair like he owned the place. And her. You know, he said casually, swirling his wine. You may be married, Aiden, but at work, she's completely mine. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My heartbeat slowed. I expected Marlo to laugh it off, correct him, wave it away. She didn't. She looked down at her glass and said quietly, That's true. That's true. 3 words that cracked something clean in half inside me. Rowan chuckled, satisfied, like he'd just staked his claim in front of a crowd. A part of me wondered if this wasn't even about her. Maybe it was about dominance, ego, power, but the larger part of me couldn't understand why she let him say it. Why she agreed. Why she didn't look at me. My hands felt cold. My mind went silent. And then something inside me, not anger, not jealousy, but clarity, settled into place. I picked up my phone and made one call. A calm, steady voice answered on the first ring. Yeah, Aiden, come immediately, I said. To the restaurant. Now. Understood. I hung up. Marlo stiffened. What did you just do? Rowan smirked. Calling backup? That's adorable. But he had no idea. Neither of them did. 15 minutes passed. The air grew thick, tense, closer to suffocating than celebratory. Marlo kept shifting in her seat. Aiden, seriously, what's going on? You'll see, I said, not coldly, not dramatically, just truthfully. Rowan raised a brow. You're not about to embarrass yourself here, are you? Before I could reply, the restaurant door opened, and a woman stepped inside. Tall, composed, wearing a charcoal blazer and an expression that could cut stone. Elise, Rowan's wife. The moment he saw her, his face drained of color. Marlo's eyes widened like she'd been struck. The table went silent. The restaurant seemed to dim around us. For a moment, no one dared to breathe. Elise walked straight to our table, her heels echoing like a countdown. She didn't look at Marlo. She didn't look at me. She looked directly at Rowan with a calmness more frightening than rage. Rowan, she said softly. We need to talk. His jaw tightened. Elise, what are you? She cut him off. Not here. Not now. You'll finish this dinner. All of it. Every word. And when you come home, we're going to have a very different conversation. She turned to me then, offering a small nod, a silent acknowledgement, a thank you wrapped in something heavier. Marlowe looked at me like she didn't recognize the person sitting across from her. But I wasn't the one who had changed. What happened next, after Elise turned and walked out, turned the entire anniversary celebration into something none of us could have predicted. A real nightmare was only beginning. Rowan sat frozen, his fork clattering against the plate as if it had suddenly become a weapon. Sweat dotted his forehead, but his pride refused to let him speak. Marlowe leaned back, her eyes wide, her hands trembling slightly. For once, she wasn't in control of the situation. I took a deep breath. "Marlowe," I said calmly, "you invited him here tonight. You let him cross a line in front of everyone. I made one call. That's all." Her mouth opened, then closed. She had no words. She didn't expect anyone to respond. She never had before. Elise had returned to the restaurant, discreet but commanding. She approached Rowan again, her presence enough to make him shrink in his chair. "You have some explaining to do," she said quietly, her gaze piercing. Rowan stammered. I wasn't. "I don't want excuses," Elise interrupted. "I want truth. You've been flaunting your freedom at work, flaunting control, and now you've humiliated your colleagues, your friends, and your own wife in front of strangers." The silence around the table was heavy. I could hear the faint clinking of silverware from other tables, the soft hum of conversations that suddenly felt distant. Everyone was watching now, drawn to the tension that radiated like electricity. Marlowe's face was pale. She glanced at me, her hand covering her mouth. "Aiden, I didn't know it would." "You did know," I interrupted gently. "And you let him say it. You didn't stop him. You agreed." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. I leaned back, letting the weight of the situation settle. "You need to understand something," I said, addressing both of them. "Respect isn't given because someone wants it. Respect is earned. And when it's taken for granted, it can disappear in a heartbeat." Rowan swallowed hard. I didn't think." "No," I said firmly. "You thought you could play with people's boundaries without consequences. That ends tonight." Elise nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the words I didn't even need to say. Her presence alone seemed to remind Rowan of every misstep he had taken, every line crossed, every unspoken betrayal, every ounce of arrogance that had built up over months of deceit. Marlowe looked down at her glass, trembling. I thought it was harmless," she whispered. "I didn't think it would." I shook my head slowly. Harmless doesn't exist when trust is on the line, when your loyalty isn't there, and your actions put everyone in harm's way. You invited this tension into our lives, and tonight we're facing it together. A deep, heavy silence fell over the table. Rowan's face was pale, Elise's calm, and Marlowe's shaken. The atmosphere had shifted. The illusion of control was gone. Finally, Rowan spoke, voice low and uncertain. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," I said. "You need to listen. And remember, what you say matters less than what you do. Respect isn't optional. Ever." Elise's eyes softened slightly as she turned away. She didn't need to argue further. She had made her point. The rest was up to Rowan. I turned my attention to Marlowe. She finally met my gaze, and I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear, yes, but also realization. For the first time, she was aware of the impact her choices had. She was no longer untouchable, no longer shielding herself behind excuses or deflections. "Tonight wasn't just about him," I said quietly. "It was about us, our boundaries, our respect. What we accept in our lives matters more than what we hope to ignore. And when lines are crossed, lines of loyalty, trust, or decency, it has consequences." Marlowe swallowed hard. I understand. You just what?" I asked gently. I didn't realize how far I'd let it go. I thought it was playful, that it didn't matter. I nodded slowly. Playfulness fades. Reality doesn't. And tonight, reality caught up. She looked down at her hands, ashamed. Rowan slumped in his chair, the weight of his mistakes pressing on him. Elise gave him one last pointed glance before stepping aside. It was as if she was saying, "You've learned your lesson. Don't test it again." The restaurant gradually returned to its normal hum. Conversations resumed, but the energy around our table was irreversibly altered. No one said much for the rest of the evening. The anniversary had started as a celebration, but it had transformed into a reckoning. And through it all, I realized something important about myself. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to make a scene. I simply needed clarity, action, and the courage to enforce boundaries. Marlo finally looked at me with a mix of guilt and relief. Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't see it before." I reached across the table, resting my hand lightly over hers. "It's not about punishment," I said. "It's about awareness, about respect, about realizing that our choices have weight. And tonight we all learned that, one way or another." Rowan didn't speak again. He didn't need to. The silence said it all. And for the first time that evening, I felt a strange, quiet sense of peace. Our anniversary had turned into a nightmare. But in that nightmare, clarity and truth had emerged. And sometimes, that's more valuable than any celebration could ever be.